How do you feel about the statements that have come from various officials in New York City, including the mayor and the deputy mayor, to the general effect that there are indications of communist involvement in the recent racial violence in New York City? And have you received any such evidence that would back up such indications?
I receive detailed reports at the close of each day with regard to the investigations that have been carried on by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. I do not care to comment in detail on those reports until some conclusions have been reached and some recommendations made, and until I think it's more appropriate to do so. I would not hesitate to say that the impression I gained from reading those reports is that there are extremist elements involved, and at the appropriate time, I think that their identity will be made known.
President,
would you comment on what you hope or what you feel might be accomplished with your meeting with Senator Goldwater this afternoon?
Senator Goldwater, through the facilities of his office, asked the legislative representative of the White House for an opportunity to meet with the president and on an unpublicized basis, and we informed the White House representative that we would be glad to meet with Senator Goldwater. We met with senators every day, and we would certainly be glad to meet with him any time that he thought a meeting would be useful, and that the 5:30 arrangement today was made. I cannot anticipate all the subjects that will come up, but I'm very glad to talk to him, and we'll try to be responsive and make the meeting as fruitful as possible.
Mr. President, in elaboration of your statement on South Vietnam, President de Gaulle yesterday called for France, Communist China, the Soviet Union, and the United States all to get out of Indochina and leave them to settle their problems themselves. Would you address yourself to that proposal, sir?
I think that I have already done that. I pointed out that we had already had one conference, and that we would carry out the agreements reached at that conference table, that there would be no need of our presence there. But until there is demonstrated upon the part of those who are ignoring the agreements reached at the conference table some desire to carry out their agreement, we expect to continue our efforts in Vietnam.
Mr. President, after Senator Goldwater said last week that if he were president, he would give at least the NATO commander more latitude in the utilization of nuclear weapons, the Republican convention rejected an amendment to the platform restating the traditional civilian authority over the military. What is your reaction to these actions, and could you give us your philosophy of civilian-military relationships in this particular area of nuclear weapons?
Well, I think there should be complete understanding and confidence in this country and among all of our friends abroad. The control of nuclear weapons is one of the most solemn responsibilities of the President of the United States. The man who is president can never get away from that responsibility and can never forget it. The American people rely on his good judgment. They want that authority vested in a civilian. That they do not expect to abandon this duty to military men in the field, and I don't think they've ever seriously considered that since the founding fathers drafted our Constitution. I myself give close and continuing attention to maintaining the most effective possible command and control over these awesome weapons. I believe that the final responsibility for all decisions on nuclear weapons must rest with the civilian head of this government, the President of the United States. And I think and reiterate that I believe that's the way the American people want it.
President, in view of the opposition that your administration has shown in the past to Mr. Chambé, how do you plan to deal with him now that he has returned and taken over control of the Congolese government?
We are going to be as cooperative and as helpful as we can in an attempt to see that the people of that area have as good a government as is possible, and we have every intention of being understanding and cooperative.
Mr. President, to go back to your meeting with Senator Goldwater, do you and Senator Goldwater intend to enter into a pact to take the issue of civil rights out of the campaign?
Well, then, I would say to the architect of this meeting this afternoon that I do not believe that any issue which is before the people can be eliminated from the campaign in a free society and election year. After all, that's the purpose of elections, is to discuss the issues. And if candidates differ on important questions, it's up to the electors who must choose between them. And in order to be able to satisfactorily choose between them, they must hear their views. Now, I believe that all men and women are entitled to their full constitutional rights, regardless of their ancestry or their religion or the region of the country in which they may live. I believe that disputes, no matter how bitter, should be settled in the courts, not in the streets. And I made that statement many times to press conferences and speeches over the country in the last several years, and that is the reason that after more than two-thirds of the Democrats in the Congress approved the Civil Rights Bill, and some 80% of the Democrats and the Republicans, 80% of the Republicans in the Senate supported the Civil Rights Bill, that I signed the Civil Rights Bill. I believe that all men and women are entitled to equal opportunities so that they can be judged according to their merits and not according to some artificial barrier. Now, to the extent that Senator Goldwater differs from these views, or the Republican Party differs, there will, of course, be discussion. And I intend to carry on some of it if I am a candidate. The test of a free society is that it discusses and resolves these issues intelligently and doesn't sweep them under the rug when they become difficult. I propose to discuss and debate the hard and difficult issues in the spirit of attempting to resolve them, and on the assumption that the American people are willing to listen and are intelligent and are unafraid. No word or deed of mine that I'm aware of has ever, or I hope will ever, lend any aid or any comfort to this small minority who would take the law into their own hands for whatever cause or whatever excuse they may use. If Senator Goldwater and his advisors and his followers will follow the same course that I intend to follow and that I expect the Democratic Party to follow, which is a course of rebuffing and rebuking bigots and those who seek to excite and exploit tensions, then it will be most welcome, and I think it will be a very fine contribution to our political life in America.
To return to the trouble in Southeast Asia for a moment. Can you hear me? To return to your statement 3 in your opening statement on Southeast Asia, do you and the Defense Department foresee a possible withdrawal of our military wives and children from Saigon or other Southeast Asia command posts in the foreseeable future?
No, we have no plans along that line. Over the past several years, I have heard rumors to that effect, seen news stories making predictions along that line, but we have no plans at the present time for any such action.
Recently in San Francisco, some rather rough language was directed at you as being president by the Republican opposition. I wondered if you felt this might be some sort of a signal as to a rather rough campaign for the presidency that's upcoming.
Most campaigns are rough campaigns. I'm an old campaigner. I've been at it 30 years. One of the first things I learned, at least as far as I'm concerned, the people are not much interested in my personal opinion of my opponent.
President, your statement that the meeting with Senator Goldwater was to be unpublicized suggests that you're unhappy at the publicity about it. Was there any breach of faith by Senator Goldwater in announcing that he was going to meet you?
Well, you've asked two questions there. First, there's no such suggestion at all. I'm not unhappy. Hope I don't look unhappy. I don't feel unhappy. And I don't know who suggested that to you. But the question was raised that it was unpublicized, and knowing the initiative and ingenuity of the American press, I didn't think it would be unpublicized very long. And I just suggested that was rather difficult for a fellow to take a glass of water at the White House or even go out to a hydrant and get a drink without it being adequately publicized. I can't even visit with my dogs without a lot of publicity, so I'm not unhappy about it at all. I just explained that I thought it would be better to put it on the record, and as far as I know, Senator Goldwater is perfectly happy with it. There's no breach of faith on his part, and certainly none on my part. And, I realize that someone might indicate, because the suggestion in all of its entirety wasn't carried out, there might be some difficulty between us, but my object in life has always been to not provoke fights, but to prevent them if possible.
Sir?
President, without regard to the Inter-American Conference now underway here, I take it you don't want to discuss the topic under negotiation. I wonder if you could tell us what your interpretation of the viewpoint of the American people is on the Cuban problem and what should be done about it.
I think that their viewpoint is the same as the viewpoint of their government. I think that, generally speaking, that viewpoint is being considered by the foreign ministers who are meeting here now. I believe that we all recognize the challenge to peace and freedom which exists, and the necessity for not only being aware of that challenge, but attempting to combat it with every reasonable and wise means available. And I believe out of this meeting, the hemisphere will find a sound and effective answer. And I think that there are some indications now that the policies that we have pursued heretofore and the ones that we are suggesting be followed now are being effective.
Assuming you're not ready to name him yet, sir, could you describe for us your ideal running mate in terms of his characteristics and attributes?
The convention will meet at Atlantic City, select a candidate for president, nominate him, and I assume he will make his recommendations, and then the delegates will act. And I think that for me to make any announcement at this time as to my personal preferences, and I have none, I've made no decision in the matter, would be premature.
President, Senator Goldwater has said that he will make an important issue out of what he views as increasing lawlessness and violence in the streets of our major cities. Are you willing to take this on as a campaign issue?
Well, I'm against sin, I'm against lawlessness, and I'm very much opposed to violence, and I think we have to put a stop to it. And to the extent that we have the power to do so in the federal government, we are doing so. We're exerting every action we know to keep violence to a minimum. We do not have a national police force in this country, and we have not assumed power that we do not have and we don't intend to. But wherever there's violence, we respond to it within the limits of our power and our authority. We do have confidence in the local authorities. We do respect the sovereign states and the executives of those states. we have communicated with the mayors and with the governors and have made available to them all the facilities of the federal government to cooperate with them and work effectively with them, and we will continue to do so. And we deplore men taking the law into their own hands and men disregarding the law wherever it takes place, and we treat them all alike. And I don't think there's any doubt in anyone's mind in the United States that the President of the United States and the power of the presidency and the people of the United States are going to do everything within their power and within their authority to stop violence wherever it appears. But our judgment is that it's not up to us to take over the authority of all the local governments, and not up to us to take over the authority of all the state governments. And I seem to have read and heard that other people, too, are opposed to the federal government usurping the rights of the state.
President, sir, are there differences of opinion between the United States and the South Vietnamese officials on the question of attacking North Vietnam? And if there are differences, what are they, please?
Answer is no, and I stated it earlier, but I repeat it.
Mr. President, how do you assess your opponent this November, Barry Goldwater, and do you anticipate a close race?
I think that what I think about Senator Goldwater and my prediction as to the outcome of the race is not very important. I think that's a matter for the American people to decide. I think what the people want to know is how I stand on issues and what my policies will be and what my party stands for. And they're much more interested in what the Democratic nominee advocates and what he thinks about his opponent or his chances of winning. I have every confidence that the Democratic Party will adopt a good platform, will select good candidates, that they will present their views to the people without regard to personalities, and the people in their wisdom will make a good decision.
About 10 days ago, Senator Goldwater used some very strong personal epithets to challenge your own sincerity of purpose in the civil rights issue. Now, would you sit down this afternoon to discuss civil rights without clearing that matter up first?
Yes, I'm not concerned with Senator Goldwater's opinion of me. Of course, I would like for it to be a good opinion, but if it's not, that's a matter for him. He's entitled to his view, and he has the right to express it if he thinks it's a proper thing to do and wise thing to do, and the American people will make their judgments of the various statements that he may make from time to time, and I'm perfectly willing to leave his opinion of me to the judgment of the people of this country.
Mr. President, could you give us your assessment of the effect Governor Wallace's withdrawal from the presidential race will have?
I have been rather busily engaged the last few days, and I haven't spent a great deal of time evaluating that situation. I don't know how much support Governor Wallace had. I don't know how it would affect the platforms and the nominees of the two parties. All I know is that he decided to withdraw, and I had heard and anticipated that he would do that, and he confirmed it. But what effect it'll have in November, I don't know.
Mr. President, how active a campaign do you plan to conduct this fall?
Whatever I think is wise and necessary, and I expect to appear in various parts of the country and be very concerned with seeing that my party and my platform and the views of my candidates are properly presented, and I'll make whatever contribution I can consistent with discharging my other duties and try to be as helpful to the ticket as possible at all time.
Mr. President, can you tell us if you plan any further action, any further federal action in New York City? And can you give us some elaboration of what you meant by extremist elements involved in the disorders?
No, I said that we get reports from there every evening. I don't think there's any question but what there are some extremist elements involved in the violence take place there. I think that must be evident to everyone who reads the newspaper. And so far as we're concerned, we're prepared to take whatever action may be necessary and desirable. We have Mr. Hoover keeping very close watch on it. He has an adequate supply of manpower available to him. He has them assigned on specific investigations at the moment, and we'll follow it very closely and do whatever needs to be done.
In presenting your views this fall and discussing the issues that you want to present, would you be willing to debate Senator Goldwater on television?
Well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it.
Mr. President. Sir, there has been the claim in the campaign of an across-the-board attack on the foreign policy of the United States during recent years. This has raised questions here and abroad as to whether this wholesale kind of attack could cause your administration to trim its foreign policy in any major way. Question, sir?
I think that foreign policy is an appropriate subject for discussion. I think the people of this country really need no advice from anyone else at other parts of the world about the decision they should make. But I think they will certainly want to be sure that the foreign policy of their country is a proper one. And I am prepared to present the views of my party on that subject, and will do so at such time and such length as may be desirable.
Sir, in response to an earlier question, you said that you hope neither candidate's words or deeds would encourage extremists. Do you feel that anything Senator Goldwater has said of late would encourage extremists?
I'll leave that up to the judgment of the people and you. I don't want to be passing personal judgment on the acts of another individual. I have given you my viewpoint on it, and that's a little mission you'll have to do for yourself.
Could you give us your reaction, please, to the attack of the mayor, Senator Goldwater, by foreign officials and foreign press?
I think that the American people are perfectly capable of making their own decision with regard to the parties and the candidates, and I think that they will do that without the necessity of advice from anyone abroad.
Thank you, Mr. President.